Beef has emerged. Adam Ottavino out of the sport and into the media world, a friend of ours on this show, and he was very critical on his show of the Mets and the way that they manage their pitching staff. So he has a pod called Baseball and Coffee, and I'll let him describe what happened, and then we'll go over the follow-up. There have been some good articles research-wise to try and kind of back up or go against what he said. So first, here's Adam Ottavino popping off.
And then this is the other issue, and this is something that really upsets me deep in my soul because, man, I've talked with every single one of these guys about having to take control over their own career because the team is not going to keep them healthy. They need to find a way to keep themselves healthy. McGill goes down, Garrett goes down, Kranick goes down, Daniel Nunez goes down, Danny Young goes down, all Tommy Johns. Not to mention Drew Smith. Rarely had a Tommy John. It's just too many injuries. So they have to figure out something, whether it's their protocols, whether it's the way Carlos uses these dudes, so haphazardly, whether they even care about keeping their guys healthy or not, but they need to be better than this. This is embarrassing. This is actually pathetic. Pathetic. I would have never let this happen if I was on the team last year. At least half these guys wouldn't have blown out. I would have protected these dudes myself. I would have had to jump in front of them myself. Fortunately, there was nobody willing to stand up and talk to Carlos this year. That was just me, I guess. So a little bit of an issue there. And if they continue down this path, they're going to be because you cannot injure this many dudes every year. And hopefully this is not an actual strategy because it's freaking pathetic and it's not player friendly. And eventually people will catch on. And what's funny is they were bragging about how good they were at keeping people healthy the year before when it had nothing to do with them. So yeah, I'm a little annoyed because these are guys that should be playing. So it pisses me off.
Wow. And Adam Ottavino is a pretty chill dude, and he popped off. And Will Sammon, who covers the team, among other things, did an article today. He put it out. He spoke to Ottavino, who kind of commented I like everything else about Mendy, but he said, he's kind of backed up what he said. John Gibbons, he spoke to his bench coach, who completely disagreed. And Gibby certainly is coming from an old school cut of cloth, who said that the bullpen usage was on point. And if anything, he felt like there were times where they were overprotecting the guys. In this article, Sammon wrote, by most measures, the Mets under Mendoza have no glaring red flags for their reliever usage. Over the last 2 years, New York ranks 21st in relief appearances on consecutive days. Of the 58 pitchers who have appeared in 70 or more games in either of the last 2 seasons, just 3 of them were Mets, all trade deadline acquisitions that were already on pace for that many games when acquired. There's a ton of research in here that essentially shows that the Mets are not really doing anything different from any other ball club, and they're protecting pitchers just as much, right? So we can look at a starting staff that was a disaster for the most part this past season and say, yeah, you're going to need more bullpen help. But do we really feel like we watched the Mets in the past couple of years and think, oh, they're just beating up their relievers?
No, I haven't, honestly. I didn't watch them that much during the year. I watched a little bit because my one son loves the Mets, so he'd put them on. But you felt that one, man. Oh, man, you felt that one. I love Adam. I've gotten along with Adam. He's a great pitcher. Ottavino is a really good dude. Something was hurting him there, man. He's had enough. So something over there when he was with the Mets, something bothered him, and this may have been the icing on the cake of the whole thing, seeing all these injuries. And him to be that passionate about it and understandable as a player, it means that much more. So there's more to it. There's got to be. There's always more to this story and to this thing. Guys are injured, of course, but I would love to talk to Adam about the whole situation and scenario. Maybe there's not. Maybe it's just something that he's very passionate about. And, the injuries, it seems like there's a bunch of injuries every year. But with the Mets, what can happen will happen, and it's just, that was hardcore right there, man. And, I like Adam for even stepping up and saying something, whether he's right or wrong, I give him credit.
I mean, those are his boys. Those are the guys he just played with, the guys that you're sitting in the bullpen with, because most of them were bullpen. I get it. McGill was a starter. But anytime I see bullpen issues with injuries, overuse, and you're like, it could be some injuries. Like I look at the Guardians and their bullpen, the guys that are down there are getting crushed. I don't really blame Voter when you don't have anybody going deep. I forget how many starts in a row. I think it was over 25 starts in a row. that nobody went more than 5 innings. Not talking about nobody went more than 6 innings. You're talking about every single night for 25 straight games, you have to pick up at least 4 innings. At least. And for Mendy to still keep those numbers below there, I have a hard time getting in line with what Otto said. Now, I didn't watch it as much, except for the fact that you just look at the numbers and you're like, hey, these guys weren't overused. Now, you're in the clubhouse. Otto was in the clubhouse, and he's talked to some of these guys. Maybe some of them were hanging. Maybe they were kind of saying, hey, we need you out there. We need you out there. We need you out there. Maybe there was kind of a push in that sense. So maybe there's some background or stuff in the background that we don't know about. But as far as just a outing standpoint, and this many Tommy Johns seems like a random year seems like a regular year for the Rays, the Dodgers, like teams that are pushing guys to the limit with how much they throw and how much, how hard they throw and the extreme velocities and spin that they're putting on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I do watch a ton of Mets games. Most of my family, they're massive Mets fans. And again, we're going back here, and I'm right in line. I mean, I've been critical as hell of what David Stearns has decided to do with his cherry picking and as AJ calls it, playing in the kiddie pool for starting pitching when the rest of your roster is beefed up and expensive. It's just not going to work on a year-to-year basis. You're going to have some years like 24 where it hits. You're going to have more years like 25 when Frankie Montas does not work out for you. And Sean Manaea has had injury issues in the past. They popped up again for him this year. Wasn't as strong. Senga's had a long list of injuries in the past. That's why he was cheaper. He could pitch like a 1 when he's healthy. So some of this was who they were buying into. Often those pitchers that are cheaper have a long injury background, right? That's a big thing. That's Montas. There's so many more stats here though, guys. Of the 62 pitchers who have compiled at least 70 innings in relief in either of the past 2 seasons, just one was a Met, Rogers, deadline acquisition, right? He said, this is Will Sammon's report. 3 times in the last 2 years has the Mets reliever appeared at least 14 times in the month. League average is 6.5 per team. 6 times a Mets reliever has thrown 15 or more innings in a month, just above the league average of 5.7 per team. So it's about average. That's why you look at this team. The one thing I looked at was, damn, they have no starting pitching. And I actually think they did an okay job of trying to manage their bullpen that had to pick up for the starting pitching all the time. The real story of the Mets to me, Kratz, was you look at all the young guys they called up early, and some of them were great, like McLean, but you didn't expect any of them to get called up, but their starting staff fell apart. So I just don't see it. This is where you have to just go back and forth with Otto and get the specifics. Last thing I will say, if a guy's hanging, and to describe that to our fans, like they're not feeling good enough to pitch that day, well, they need to talk to the medical staff, or the medical staff addresses that, and then they need to go on the IL.
Yep. And players always want to play through things. Because I have a good connection with Mendy, I have a hard time believing, and watching the games, I have a hard time believing that they push these guys too hard, because he really, really deeply cares about the players. And knowing David Stearns, I have a hard time believing that he would like send down some kind of edict and say, wow, we got these guys, like you have to put them. No, they understand. They both understand trying to keep players healthy. And I would say the Mets are not an organization that sits there and goes, we don't care if they get hurt. Because there are definitely some organizations where I would disagree with that statement. I think they are fine with it because they have a whole cavalcade of more guys running into the bullpen. Like, we're starting to get into the era in some organizations where it really is a bullpen. Like, it really is. We'll just get more cattle. As soon as those cattle are done, we move them out and move the next cattle in. And that's how teams run, a cheaper bullpen.
Yeah, the Rays and Guardians have been doing that for years, and they've had some of the better bullpens. They will use them to death, and then you'll never hear from them again. It's just how it works. I'm singling out 2 teams. There are many others. Anyway, Otto pitched 60-plus appearances for the Mets a couple of years ago. You would think he knows better than we do, so there's a side to it that I would love to bring him on to ask about, and I'm sure we'll get him again at some point this offseason to talk about it.